Thank you again for coming here to Berlin. For some of you, it's been a really far way from the US and Canada. For some, it's also far, but not that far, a few hundred kilometers less. And I just wanted to say a few things about playing the piano as a non-professional pianist in general, because that's actually what you are. So you all have different professions and you're playing the piano because you're so passionate about it. So I have written down, first of all, what is the advantage of being non-professional to someone who is maybe professional. Also, what might be the disadvantages, what we can learn from it, and also like what the reasons might be that you make music. And it would be also nice to have like some feedback from you, why you're here, why you're pursuing this, why you're making music. And then I have written down a few points that are especially important for your piano practice as amateurs, which might be different to if you pursue the instrument professionally or not, but which I have observed over the last years now, because most of my colleagues don't never work with non-professional pianists, and you just work on the piece, and that's wonderful, and about technique. But there are a few things that I observed with you guys, which are very unique and which I think I wanted to share with you, because it might be interesting for everyone. So let's get started. First of all, the best thing about being a non-professional pianist is that you have less pressure, right? So many of us, myself included, who do this for a living, I get this little problem with my finger. I'm already worried, do I have to cancel concerts? Will I lose thousands of euros for my living? Or, you have this pressure that you really have to perform and you have to deliver all the time. No matter how you feel, if you lose some relative or you really have a bad time, you're sick, you still have to somehow be able to play. And that can be sometimes a disadvantage if you're professional, because if you really do that too much and you don't feel like it, then maybe you lose the motivation to actually look deep inside the music. So that's definitely an advantage for you. You can just stop at any time. You can do this really as your passion, and therefore you're much freer to explore many things. Because even if you choose to say, let's say, okay, I want to play more repertoire now, I don't have to go super deep, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect, that's up to you. You can say, I really want to master Chopin etudes, that's also fine. You can say, I want to do more of this repertoire, because as a professional, people might have different expectations of you. So you are free to really pursue this for the music, and that's really, really wonderful. Exactly, so if then you manage to cover the basics, right? So if you manage to build a foundation where your technique is good, where your strategy with practicing is good, and where you feel good about yourself with the piano, then the result might be that you're even more creative. You can maybe play even more extreme ways in the interpretation, because it comes back to, for example, if I go to a piano competition, people expect me to play in a certain way. So if I choose to play like Glenn Gould, for example, there are other examples who do it even more extremely, then they might just throw me out of the competition, or even a concert might not invite me back because it was too extreme, even though maybe that was what I felt or what I wanted to do. But if it's not what people expect you to do, you can really explore different kinds of playing, and I encourage you to. Always, of course, with the idea in the back of the mind that we should follow the composer, and that we should try to find out what the composer intended with the piece, what ideas were there, what kind of emotions were there, and also, what kind of maybe philosophy is there behind the piece, to then try to understand that. But as an actor, you can do things in very different ways. And if you're angry, everyone shows the anger in a different way. If you are sad, everyone shows the sadness in a different way. Someone might cry, someone might just go silent, someone go partying. So there are different options about that, and it's the same with music. We might all bring this piece as very sad, but you can do that in many different ways. So I think as a non-professional pianist, you're even more free to choose and try different things, because also myself, if I choose to do one interpretation for a concert, I should stick to that in my preparations. If I start changing it, I might get a bit more confused and I might screw up the performance. So I have to choose more diligently what kind of interpretation I want to keep and want to follow. The last point I've basically covered already, that nobody really pushes you to go and execute and to really follow your practice. So that's the beautiful thing, is because you're here now, I know for sure that it's all your own hunger for music and your own desire, because many of my colleagues, also parents may be pushing, teachers may be pushing, managers may be pushing, so you never know for sure. But with you, I know for sure you're here because you really desire the music, and that's also one of the advantages to go free and explore that world. Of course, there are also some disadvantages compared to professional pianists, because it's more difficult for you to find that kind of professional support, and people might not take you seriously in what you do. It's just not an amateur pianist, And that is, for me, myself, is disappointing, because I love working with you guys and also with others. And that is something that we have to fight for together, that we really say, okay, music making is super important, not just on stage in an international concert hall, but for everybody. And it's very different to just passively sit in a concert and consume, or actively really learn this. And it's part of, our culture, especially in Europe, but also outside Europe. And to keep that tradition and actually encourage everybody to learn the piano. And that's my mission, and I'm happy that you are part of this. Another disadvantage to people maybe not taking you seriously is that generally, of course, you have less experience, right? So, of course, you have to deal with some technical problems sometimes. So we have to really break it down to very key elements of the technique, to really implement those into the practice, and that will help you then in the long term to actually develop a more stable technique and to be free to express what you want, because in many of your cases I see that you have a very clear idea of how it should sound, because you have much experience as a listener, or you have already played different things, but sometimes the technique is the one element holding you back from actually achieving that yourself. I will get to strategies later on a little bit. That's just the main idea I have there. So sometimes to break the technique down into some key elements and try to focus not on too many things at once, but like each practice session, for example, you just focus on, okay, today I want to work on my wrist. Today I want to work on relaxing after the long notes. Today I want to work on making this bell sound, and not trying to put too many things together, and really take it one step at a time, and that will help you to improve with that long term. And another thing goes very much hand in hand with this, but it's of course that you have not learned probably at a young age. You have not really learned how to strategically practice. So you have been fooling around with the pieces, right? But you have not really learned on how to discover them deeper, if that's what you choose to do or what you want to do. Yeah, that goes hand in hand, but I will tell you in a minute on what is important there as well. But those are like kind of the disadvantages I see for non-professional. I wrote down a few things, what I thought might be also motivations. What the reasons might be to do music in general for everybody. One is, for just to be a creative hobby. So if you're, let's start with the more simple things. It's just a creative hobby. So if you have some work that is probably more on the logical side of the brain, and you know all day long you do these things, then you might want to have something which just enables you to express yourself more creatively. So it's a creative hobby. Then I wrote down emotional experience. I mean, there are many interconnections here, but to actually be, as you've said, to express your emotions and to express your life experiences. The next thing is spirituality. As you said, it's your religion, or in your case you said it's a gift from God. So for many of us it's something very
bigger than life.
Bigger than life, basically, and we can express that also through music. And making money can be also a motivation for a professional pianist. But even if you're non-professional, you could just in theory say, okay, I want to learn now how to play at weddings, or I want to play in a funeral for friends, and you might also earn a little bit of money, and that can of course be a motivation. There is nothing wrong about it. As I've said, in your case there's a big advantage that you don't need to do that, but you could in general, if you get to a certain level, also have little gigs every now and then, or play a public concert per year at your local join a band, something like this. You could do that too. And then there's of course the tradition. So for many of us, it's the parents have already made music, or they said, you should learn that, it's part of our culture. So there's a certain traditional aspect to it. Competition might be also a reason. So even if we are all friends with each other, we might find it inspiring let's put it that way, inspiring what someone else has achieved from a similar level than us, and that might also give us some reason to work even harder, to also feel that we have progressed that fast, for example, or that far. There is the aspect of connection, so that we can connect with each other. You can connect if you're on stage with the audience. The audience can connect through music, talk to each other about music. We can work on it together. Like here, there are many aspects of connection, human connection, and self-fulfillment. So you have something that you can really practice, and you fulfill yourself somehow. You immerse into it. You forget your stress. So I think that sums up most of the aspects. Let's get to the most important points for practice for you as non-professional pianists. First of all, my first advice is be patient. Especially, we can all make the same kind of progress, but if you are older, probably new things will take a little longer time. That's very natural, as when you are 12 years old. That's also when learning a language. The advantage that you have if you are a little older is that you have more experience, and it also goes back into some things might be faster in understanding for a piece, for example. Some pieces with a technical aspect might take a little longer, but be patient. And what helps there is also sometimes, especially in talking about things technically and physically, moving a step back can also be a step forward. We know what we want it to sound and we want to get there as fast as possible, but sometimes that playing things faster, learning more pieces, more difficult pieces, that can also hold us back in some way. So to actually take a step back or say once, okay, now this time I will practice an easier piece, this time I will practice slower, this time I will focus on less pieces. I will play through many pieces, but I will really work on just one or two pieces to actually take that pressure away. That will help us sometimes to move forward even faster if we take that step. There is this book in Germany, Momo heißt das, glaube ich. It's a book for children. And there is also the time is different, the time is working different, and also the space is different in that book. And if there is one scene where Momo has to walk backwards in order to reach the goal, which is in front. So that is sometimes also helpful when you practice the piano. Not to always push forward, but to also relax, enjoy what you have achieved so far, and maybe take a step back. So that's one thing that's important. Then the choice of repertoire, to do that very consciously. So to think, okay, how long should the pieces be that I play? What styles do I want to play? What kind of difficulty do I want or need in the pieces? So as amateur pianists, you are very free to choose what kind of styles you play. Right? I encourage you always to play a little bit of Bach. If you don't want that, that's fine, but I encourage you because it helps a lot. Also to work on one shorter technical piece that can be from the Czerny short studies, 8-bar studies, or something else that we can discover and discuss, of course. But to have a little technical challenge on just one specific aspect and a short Bach piece is always very useful. Everything else, if you want to do more Mozart, Beethoven, Scarlatti, contemporary music, German romantic repertoire, Russian romantic, it doesn't really matter, it's up to you. You just have to decide, you cannot do everything at once, right? But that you consciously choose what kind of style you maybe want to discover more at this specific moment of your life. And then to really think also about the length of the piece. That's a very individual thing that really depends on your work schedule, on your free time, also on your level, also on the difficulty of the piece. You might choose longer pieces that are technically maybe not so demanding, or if you like a study, if you have 1-2 studies that are more difficult, then you can take shorter pieces. So that's something to also consider. So I would not recommend you to play 3 really long sonatas, for example, but maybe always one longer piece plus 1 or 2 shorter pieces at the same time, which are then maybe one is more technically demanding, one is more mentally demanding, but that's mainly up to you. And then the difficulty of the pieces. So you always want to have that kind of flow experience in your practice. So you should not play pieces that are super easy for you, because then you will get bored. And you should not play pieces that are extremely way too difficult for you, because then you will get frustrated and you get problems and you will not be able to do it in the way you want to. But to choose pieces which give you a little bit of challenges, but not too much at the same time. So where it's just a little bit outside your comfort zone is actually absolutely the best. And then what comes with that is a balance of exercises and fun, because we do it all for fun. But that you know also for yourself, maybe you can write that down somewhere also a little bit to know exactly what your goals are for your playing. There could be, I just have written down a few things that could be your goals. A goal could be to learn about as much repertoire as possible. Might be different styles. Then you might say, okay, I'm happy with 80% of the perfection level, but I want to discover more things. Maybe then you would also choose shorter pieces, because then you're able to dive into a new piece quicker than when it's half an hour long. You might say, I want to play competitions. There are also competitions for amateur pianists. Might be a very ambitious goal, but some have that, and that's fine. Then you choose, of course, also different practicing routines. You might say, I want to play some concerts, some events for a family or parties, or you want to apply to some schools or some other universities or whatever. That's possible. Or you say you have specific repertoire goals. You say, okay, I want to have this one Schubert sonata that I can really play very well. So in my opinion, it's always good to have a mixture of exercise or work and play and fooling around. So if you say, let's say, okay, I want to have 2 or 3 really core pieces in my repertoire, you can work on them for years. I do the same, right? I have pieces that I really play for seasons and years in concerts, and I don't change them because I have put so much work into it and they work, and I know they can trust the pieces, and I can always discover something new. That's the great thing about great composers, that you can always dive one layer deeper and you'll find new things, and you can play it in a spontaneous way, and somehow, the journey never ends. But at the same time, you might want to also have some time left in your day to just discover things. I would always recommend like shorter pieces for that. Different styles, might be Bach, might be inventions from Mendelssohn, songs without words, easier sonatas by Haydn for classical. Also the easiest Beethoven sonatas might work for that very well, because then you can jump into different things very quickly. Or you say, you want to learn as much repertoire as possible, and then you dive into something very intensely and then take on the next thing. Then it's just not so easy to do many things at the same time, right? So that's a bit up to you. And what I also recommend for your practice, of course, always get as much feedback as possible for your specific goals. So for example, if you tell me your goals directly, okay, I want to do this, then it's easier for me to give you the qualified feedback for that. Because if you say you want to discover as much repertoire as possible, then I might send you 10 pieces. For you, maybe you don't know this, or this piece is very different, and we can discover that on together. But if you say you want to master something extremely deeply, then I might give you also other feedback for that. So in this case, you have myself as a feedback. Maybe someone else is just watching this, get feedback from someone qualified, because you don't know your blind spots, right? You have your habits that you have just learned, but if you don't have the experience, you don't see, obviously, what otherwise you would play differently, right? So there are some blind spots in your playing that you will uncover if you have qualified feedback, and then you can create a positive feedback loop. So from the feedback, you make more progress. You might have better performances if you play a piece through. Then you get better motivation and you get more disciplines and you have more progress. If the feedback is missing, then it goes downwards. So to have as much feedback, also for you, just ask as much as you can to really move forward in your way that you have chosen for yourself. What is also good is then, according to your goals, to plan a bit and review the practice to see, okay, is that what I'm doing actually helping my goals or not? I think most important is that you really choose in what way your journey should go with music, and then you can plan the practicing accordingly and decide what is important and what kind of pieces you should focus your time on. So that's it. Thank you. Do you have any questions or remarks or
just from saying
or criticism?
The professional has the stress of concerts coming and whatever. But I think the flip side of that is that the amateur that plays for a year and then has one concert, there's a great deal of stress because they haven't got any experience
Yeah,
build
yeah.
on. They're not building on.
That's right. If you don't
it
have
can be
it.
quite daunting if you're an amateur to have an event that you
Yeah.
perform at, and you're not getting a lot of opportunity
To prepare
perform.
for that.
And so you really, it's like, you're one shot.
Stressing you out.
Yeah.
Is that something you want to do at some point?
I have done it in the past. I don't see it for myself now. Like, I used to play a fair amount of chamber music, and we did have these kind of concerts that every once in a while I'd be like playing when I'm not used to it, like not used to performing. So those are more stressful. But I'm not sure that I see that coming down the road. But who knows?
Okay.
I was just thinking actually that I feel like I need to revisit my goals.
Bring your questions to the next session or just post it and I will review and we can discuss that.
How do you feel about an amateur tackling a piece that you both know technically they really can't handle it, but they want to do it anyway? Like,
I mean, there have been it's been in the past extreme cases where someone told me, for example, I'm working on Mephisto Waltz by Liszt right now.
Yeah.
And he was having struggle playing a C major scale. So I was like, okay, that really, I told him, like, it's great that you have this goal, let's work towards it, but, you have to really work on the basics first. And that is a bit frustrating when people just don't understand that there is a path. So it's just sometimes a general tendency of non-professionals, sometimes because you know so much that you want to discover so many things. I always am a fan of like reducing a little bit because I've seen better results with it in the long term. But it's also up to you if you say you want to discover more. I encourage that. And then might just choose 1-2 pieces to focus on and the rest is because you can learn a lot through reading many things.
Well, it's a bit like when we're talking about a piece in a certain area that would determine the tempo if you absolutely had to play it.
Yeah.
But if you decide that little section you're okay with kind of flubbing it or maybe doing a simplified version of it or something, that one section, then you can play the rest of the piece. Because if you say, well, I'm going to slow the whole piece down so I can get through that section, you're resting.
That's like the approach I've been thinking. So for example, in this one case where this person said, okay, I want to play Liszt Sonata, or I'm working on Liszt Sonata, it's like, someone says, I want to become a runner. It doesn't matter to me if I take 5 or 6 hours or 12 hours, but there's really just no point in running 40 kilometers for you guy. You just need to first get fit a little bit before you can start with 5 kilometers, then maybe 6, So it's a bit similar to that. Mm-hmm. So you just a realistic approach to where you're at right now. And I'm fine if you play a Beethoven sonata that doesn't sound like Brandel's. It's great that we discover this music. It's more about asking the right questions about the music that makes it interesting rather than... And it's also the intention. If I feel the intention is right for someone really wants to learn and wants to discover it, then I don't really care so much about the level. If it's an honest interest and an honest enthusiasm, then that's fine.
And what happens when I realize, I think it's not really the piece I would like to play? How long does one have to stick to the piece? Or
was that because of the frustration of the practice, or was it a piece that you really loved in the beginning, or why did you start it in the first place?
Because it was probably the piece I could play best at that point of time, because I didn't have much time to practice, because you asked me what are you working on.
Yeah.
And so I
then we just leave it and we take something else.
How often can you do that? Are you allowed to do that?
You're allowed to do it. I mean, what other pieces would you like to?
I mean, the Bach.
Then let's stick with, happy with Bach.
Into that and maybe
there is, as I've said, no obligation to stick to that.
You
can leave it.
I was just wondering whether, because sometimes, your parents might say, you have to finish that before you start something else.
But this is the thing, like, where is the finish line? There is no finish line in music.
Yes, that's the...
So after you have tackled the most obvious problems, which you did, and we've discussed also musical aspects, both of it, and we've had some time to go in there, then there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, now I prefer to do more Bach.
How do you choose a repertoire? Like what? I'm finding that I always liked hearing Chopin, but the times that I've tried to play it, it hasn't been necessarily as enjoyable. but for example, I've always loved I love Tchaikovsky. I think this is my. I would like to play the Seasons at some point. And I find the playing enjoyable, the piece that I've tried.
Yeah.
And the process has been enjoyable. I wonder what it is that distinguishes, like, there's stuff that you really enjoy hearing and stuff that you enjoy actually working on.
So I did understand you correctly that with Tchaikovsky you felt good, but with Chopin you didn't feel so good by playing. But both of them you like listening to.
Yes, I love them both. The experience of listening to them.
Yeah, yeah. And which pieces you have tried? This one prelude by Chopin, the slow one. Was there any other piece you've tried?
In the past I've tried others. Yeah,
which one?
A mazurka I tried. But so then remember.
Yeah, there might just be a thing of a language of the composer that suits you better or not so good. I mean, I remember my teacher Lars and I were discussing pieces, and I said, you know, Chopin's etudes, they're really difficult, but I like that he composes in a way that is just very natural for the hand. So it might be very difficult, but I feel like much better than, for example, with Brahms. And he says, oh, what, really? For me, Brahms is much more natural. And he doesn't like, for him, Chopin is unnatural, or was, and now Brahms, you know, so it's a preference thing, probably. So you should try everything. Also, you know, get into the discussion and learn about many things. And then just try a little bit from every style, and then you will find what suits you. And as you're improving, maybe other things will be easier in the future and other things might be more difficult. It's also a personality thing, like some people are better with one composer and human beings might be nice, but you just automatically relate better to someone and you don't know why. It's just like...
I think your suggestions are good, so I don't know, I would just say that everyone has a good sense of where you might improve. Right? I think your suggestions are good.
Thank you.
Yeah.